Hulk smash. Oh, hey guys, Danny here from geeksofdoom.com, and I am continuing on with my MCU rewatch. Posted a video about the original Iron Man from 2008 a couple of days ago. My son and I watched The Incredible Hulk last night from 2008 also, and this is the long-forgotten Marvel film. This is the one that appears usually towards the very bottom of most people's lists, and I think it's unfairly there for a few reasons. First of all, the reason that you might notice, I'll put the toys down. The reason why I have this DVD, yes, physical media, folks, 3-disc special edition that I bought, God, years ago. The reason I have this here is because this movie is not on Disney Plus. This was a Universal release, and it is not part of Disney's collection. It's the only Universal film. You could tell that they didn't really know, that you knew what they were planning, but you didn't know how big it was going to get back in 2008. And I'm going to say it right off the bat. I think this is a much maligned film. You're also going to hear me say this as I continue with this series, that I don't think there has been a bad MCU film. I think there have been mediocre to not as good as the other ones, 3-star out of 5 movies, but I don't think there's been a bad one. I mean, Kevin Feige is kind of batting almost 1,000 with these movies. I think that, like I mentioned with Iron Man, I think that a lot of the movies that, when you do a franchise ranking, when you do an MCU ranking, the ones that typically appear towards the bottom are only there because they've been surpassed by others. Now, I have a list here of likes and dislikes about this movie and some stuff about it. And I gotta tell you, my likes far outnumber my dislikes. This movie, first thing that I like about it, and look, let's just get the elephant out of the room here. Edward Norton. We talked about in my Iron Man review, Terrence Howard, the original Rhodey, the original who was going to be War Machine, and obviously contract issues aside, Edward Norton is Bruce Banner in this film. And I'm just going to come out and say it. He's fine. He's good in this movie. I don't think he was the problem acting-wise at all. Now, I've heard plenty of behind-the-scenes stuff about how he rewrote versions of the script and was a kind of a pain in the ass. And I've heard stories about that, about Edward Norton. But that doesn't take away from the fact that on screen, he's a really good actor, and he's really good here as Banner. And I thought the CGI used for the Hulk here looked excellent. And again, you have to take yourself back to 2008. The last Hulk that we had seen was the 2003 Ang Lee film, Hulk, starring Eric Bana. And I get what Ang Lee was trying to do there, but the CG in that movie made the Hulk look like an actual cartoon. He looked terrible. And the CG of the people around him in that movie didn't help. He's fighting like monster poodles in one scene, and that whatever Nick Nolte monster at the end. God, that movie is an abomination. Winky. I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about you. So getting back to the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, I think when you see him on screen, which they hold off on, they keep him in the shadows for a while, when he breaks out, literally, onto the screen for the first time, I remember thinking, wow, he looks awesome. They finally did it. They finally gave us a good live-action Hulk with the special effects and the CG. It was 5 years removed from the Ang Lee disaster. Now, have the special effects increased? Have they gotten better in the next 11 to 12 years? as we've seen Hulk again in films like all the Avengers movies, and of course Thor Ragnarok. Yeah, but let's face it, this remains the only standalone Incredible Hulk film in the MCU, and it was the second MCU film. And so let's talk about it a little bit. Things that I liked right off the bat. I already mentioned Edward Norton. I understand the reasons why they might have recast him, and no issues with Mark Ruffalo. I love Mark Ruffalo. But there's this kind of like, retrofitted story that, oh, well, Edward Norton was terrible, so he needed to be replaced. No, Edward Norton is good. He's not the problem with this movie. And if you're listening, expecting to hear a laundry list of problems that I have with the Incredible Hulk, you're not going to find it. There are issues. We'll get to those. But I kind of like this movie. So let's get into the stuff that I really liked. Obviously, this is the second film in the MCU. So you can't lay the tie-ins to the other Marvel movies on thick. One of my biggest problems, spoiler alert for the future, with Age of Ultron is how thick they lay the setup for all this other stuff that's going to happen. There's Wakanda, there's Thor's vision, there's Captain America's mind trip. There's all this stuff that is just setting up for the future that takes away from really the driven plot of that movie. This movie is very subtle with its nods. You see Stark Industries on the screen as General Ross is looking at weapons. They talk about, obviously, the super serum and how it related back to World War II. And, of course, anybody watching that is going, oh, super serum, World War II, Captain America. There's other, you see S.H.I.E.L.D. on a computer screen, but there's no overt references to anything else of that nature. I really like that this movie is not a true origin story. This movie is not meet Dr. Banner, find out that he's a scientist, he's going to do gamma testing or radiation testing, and oh my god, the experiment goes wrong, and like Spider-Man and other characters in the Marvel universe, the scientist gets blasted with his own, science, and he becomes the hero or the villain or the monster. We don't get any of that. The movie opens where Banner is in Brazil, and I think the entire Brazil section of this film, about the opening half hour, is really good. You get some scenes with him learning his breathing mechanisms and his mechanisms to stay cool and calm under pressure, which doesn't feel like exposition, but it ends up being in a way, because he ends up using some of the martial arts training. He ends up using the breathing techniques to calm himself so that he doesn't just hulk out everywhere. There's an incredible chase sequence when Ross and Tim Roth, who plays Emil Blonsky in this film, they find him in Brazil because of a Stan Lee cameo gone wrong. And there's this incredible chase sequence on foot across rooftops that is, this is, again, years before films like Casino Royale took rooftop chases to just this exponential level that I don't think they'll ever reach again. But it's a really great scene, and you really feel for Banner in this moment. Eventually, he gets back to his soda bottling plant where he works. He's being beat up by some stooges. He's got the military on his trail, and we finally get that first big Hulk out scene. Now, one issue that I will say, while I love Tim Roth as an actor, and he's good in this film, the best villains are those with the best motives. So in the MCU, we come back to the big three of villainy, which I think most people will agree. You got Loki, Thanos, and Killmonger. And all of those villains have deeply personal reasons. That is way too purple back there. Deeply personal reasons for what they're doing. and they have deep personal connections to the other characters. Loki is Thor's brother who feels wronged. Killmonger is the lost relative of T'Challa who feels that, his life was left behind and he wants to claim the birthright that is actually his. Thanos is, he watched his own planet die and now he wants to save the universe by killing half the universe. Emil Blonsky is just a soldier who enjoys fighting, and he sees the Hulk as his prime target, like a hunter who has found that great, he's almost like an Ahab figure, where he becomes obsessed with finding the great green whale, almost in a way, with finding the Hulk, which leads to him eventually taking super serum, which leads to him having an altercation with the Hulk which ends with him basically all of his bones being shattered and any normal human be left for dead. And then eventually he combines Banner's blood with the super serum, and it has the effects that turn him into the Abomination. Now, I don't want to jump all the way to the end, but what I will say about the Abomination is Blonsky, again, he doesn't work as the primary villain because there's just no connection to Banner. Ross works as a villain, but he's also just like an angry military general. So this movie does suffer in the villain department. When we do get Abomination at the end, I think that fight is a pretty cool fight. Again, if we're looking at it from a 2008 lens, the CGI for those two characters works pretty well, and they have a pretty good fight. And I will make this point. Go watch Venom. Venom with Tom Hardy came out 2018, 2019 maybe? I forgot. It's one of those years. In other words, it came out a decade after this movie. The final fight scene in Venom looks worse. It looks so much worse than the final fight scene in this movie, which took place in 2008. So I like the final fight. I like finally hearing Hulk smash. Really like that part of it. I do admit, though, that in the villain department, especially for a one-off villain, especially for a villain who's not left dead at the end, he's alive. My son who was watching with me said, maybe we'll see Blonsky back, or the Abomination back in the new She-Hulk series when that comes out. So maybe we'll see that. We don't know. Other things the campus scene in this movie, that's where you first get, it's basically a repeat of the opening Brazil chase, except now it's done on the college campus that they're on. Betsy Ross is her boyfriend, played by Ty Burrell of Modern Family. He makes the call to Ross, and we get this big chase sequence, and I love this fight scene. It's one of my favorite action sequences in the MCU. I genuinely love it. I think it's awesome watching the Hulk fight these military guys. The way he destroys the trucks and then uses parts of the trucks as weapons. They hit him with the sonic pulse to slow him down. And then he just leaps and does a falling elbow drop to one of the trucks to destroy it. I love it. I really do. Think it's awesome. I like Tim Blake Nelson as Samuel Stearns, Mr. Blue. And I like, again, the hint that he gets the blood of Mr. Green, the Hulk blood, drips into his open wound. His head starts to grow. For those who don't read the comics, Samuel Stearns is one of the Hulk's main villains, the leader. Does the leader come back in the She-Hulk series? Are we ever going to see these villains again? That's what I mean when I say this movie feels like it has been completely forgotten by the MCU. It is not on Disney+. Disney Plus does this really nice thing where it allows you to watch the Marvel films in chronological order, not in release date order. I'm doing the standard release date order. But this movie's missing, and if you go on Disney Plus, you might literally forget that this movie exists. And it's a shame, because it does set up a lot of things that could potentially come back. Abomination is left alive. Samuel Stearns is left with his head growing with Hulk blood, probably becoming the leader. He's left alive. We don't know what happens to him. And yeah, overall, it's a pretty good movie. Now, negatives, I will give you, there are some wonky CGI effects. A lot of the backgrounds don't look particularly great in this film. It kind of looks like they're standing in front of green screen, which takes me out of it a little bit. The director of the film is Louis Leterrier. Is that how you say his name? Louis Leterrier. He's pretty good. I think he does a good job with this movie, but there are some shots that don't look particularly great. There are also, I will give him credit, there are some shots that are freaking awesome. There's one shot, I think in the soda factory, where a bomb goes off and you just see the silhouette of the Incredible Hulk in this blast. One of my favorite shots. Love it. I do want to talk about a few cameos, because one thing that's great about watching and rewatching Marvel films is noticing little things that you've seen these movies dozens of times, but then you still pick up on things. So, obviously, we have Lou Ferrigno in a great cameo, getting bribed with pizza to let Bruce Banner into the university. Lou Ferrigno, of course, played the Hulk on TV. But he then bribes somebody who in the credits is known as Computer Nerd. And it's a young Martin Starr. And he has one scene where he's holding a slice of pizza that's flopping down, and he waves as if to say, thanks for this free pizza, you can use the computer. And that's it. He's not acknowledged by name or anything. Martin Starr, you might know as the teacher, Mr. Harrington, from Spider-Man Homecoming. And also then in the sequel, Spider-Man Far From Home. Is this Computer Nerd Mr. Harrington? I'm going to assume yes. It's the same actor. It's the MCU. I'm going to bet that when they were casting Spider-Man Homecoming, they picked Martin Starr to play that role in part because of this small little blink and you'll miss it cameo. Speaking of literal blink and you'll miss it cameos, during the end fight sequence, which takes place in Harlem, an African-American man runs out and witnesses the devastation that's being taken place from the abomination in Harlem. And he's got a very familiar scar. And I was like, wait a minute, that can't be. It's Michael Kenneth Williams, Omar from The Wire, Chalky from Boardwalk Empire, Montrose in Lovecraft Country. Michael Kenneth Williams has a blink and you miss it cameo in the 2008 Incredible Hulk. So I thought that was interesting, and the next time you watch it, you can look out for that in the Harlem sequence while Abomination is destroying some stuff. My other major flaw in this movie, and again, I like Liv Tyler. I don't know if she was the best fit in this film, and I don't know if I bought the chemistry between her and Edward Norton. I liked Edward Norton. There are some moments where they try to force some humor between them. There's this cab ride scene where they get to New York that feels really out of place with the rest of the movie. But overall, this is a good action movie that it carries, it's not a straight origin story, which means we're saved 30 to 45 minutes of getting to know you nonsense. It gets to the point pretty quickly, and I thought the Hulk looked really good in this movie. I mean, look at that. That's a really good Hulk. It's just a shame that this movie is kind of lost to the ether now because it's a Universal film. It's not on Disney Plus, and it gets buried in a lot of people's bottom fives. Now, that being said, will it end up in my bottom five? If it does, it's not because of the quality of this movie. It's because other films in the MCU are better. So that's it for The Incredible Hulk. I'm going to guess sometime later today, my son is going to ask, can we watch Iron Man 2? And that is next in the MCU countdown. So I will see you very soon with an Iron Man 2 review. I'm going to have a lot to say about that movie and a certain person's accent in that film. Oh boy. But that said, this has been Danny from geeksofdoom.com. Follow along, subscribe, leave a comment, tell us what you thought about The Incredible Hulk. Am I giving this movie too much praise? Am I not hating it enough for social media? Let me know in the comments. Tell me, and we'll see you again very soon.